I'll be.
Thanks, Jeff. Keep going.
Hi. So glad to have you. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. Thank you for asking.
Okay, so first we will start off with some icebreakers, and then we'll move on to the real questions. So what is your go-to pizza order?
So there's this pizza place in New Jersey called Naples Pizza in Barnegat, New Jersey, that has the best Italian pizza that you can get. So that's my anywhere. Now, I don't obviously get to get that often because we're far from that place. So here in Tuscaloosa is De Palma's Pizza without a doubt. That is my go-to.
That is awesome. Okay, my next question for you is, when you were a child, what did you want to be when you grew up?
You know, I don't think I had a clue whatsoever. I enjoyed everything. I did not think I wanted to be a teacher. In fact, I didn't think I ever would be a teacher. So I really didn't know. I thought I wanted to do something just outside all the time. But everything, as I got older, everything pushed me, rightfully so, to become a teacher.
What made you want to be a superintendent?
So like I said, I almost didn't want to be a teacher, but then I changed my mind and became a teacher. And when I was teaching, I was adamant, because I had loved it and I thought I was pretty decent at it, that I didn't want to do anything but teach. I didn't want to be a principal. I didn't want to do anything like that. But then when I started seeing the ability to make impact on a larger level, that's when I decided, okay, I'll go be a principal. So then I was a principal of a school, and then I said, I'll never go be a central office or assistant superintendent. But the same thing is, when you see the ability to impact what we do at a larger scale, it draws you to a position like superintendent, where you can make a lasting impact on a system and in an organization for a community, and change outcomes for a whole lot of students, and change outcomes, quite honestly, for a community.
That kind of leads into the next question, which is, what are the responsibilities as your role as superintendent?
So my main priority is our mission, which is education, right? It is the basics of education: math, reading, writing, all that stuff. But the overall thing is making sure every student is prepared for what comes after high school, so they can be successful in this world, right? So success in a career, success in college, success in a career choice. So not only successful as far as salary or promotion, but successful in the sense of enjoyment of each and every day, enjoying one's life, right? So I think that's our ultimate goal in education. But my responsibility is to build systems that do that, right? Put people in place, teachers in place, principals in place, so that students have this really positive experience in school, so they can be their best selves of whatever that is. And then, of course, with that responsibility comes safety, right? We've got to make sure our students are safe, they feel safe, and that they are in these really positive schools where they're challenged academically and where they're taken care of socially, and then just taken care of from a safety perspective, so that every student, and you hear me say over and over again, every student, because this isn't about some students or a lot of students. Our job is for every student we serve has got to be successful in school, and then when they leave us, to go into college and career.
And education leads to a lot of success. Can you provide a brief overview of your career in education so far?
I started teaching in Greene County, which is right next door to us here in Tuscaloosa. After teaching in Greene County, I came here to the city schools and taught at Central High School West, taught English. And then I became an assistant principal at several schools, middle schools and high schools in the city schools. Then I moved to being a principal of Eastwood Middle School, and then HR director for the school system, assistant superintendent, and this is my final stop, superintendent of the Tuscaloosa City Schools.
Takes a lot. It's a lot of steps.
That's right.
Okay, for my first question, how does your administration ensure that the teacher voice is represented through your decision making?
So the way we do it is we make sure when we make decisions, we do our best to make sure that we involve the people who will be impacted by the decision. Okay. So if it means for teachers that they're going to, if it's a a new program or a professional development or a decision regarding their role as teachers, we've got to make sure they're involved in that decision. So we do things through a thing called thought exchange, where we can share ideas like through a social media type approach. We do focus groups, we do surveys. We have a group of teacher ambassadors that when we're dealing with big issues, we ask them their perspective on those things. We often will send out links for people to give us feedback on particular decisions we're about to make. And then we also do it through our principals, right? So our principals serve as the advocates for their teachers, so that the principal voice and the teacher voice fill into all these decisions. But what we work to do is stay away from making a decision where it impacts teachers and they were not involved in some capacity in that decision. And I think teachers are a powerful group, and nobody knows better what students need than teachers who are in the classroom doing the work. But they're always so busy teaching, and they don't always see themselves as political agents, right? And I think it is important, though, that they do become agents for their own profession. And I think that's changing in our communities, where our teachers, especially this past year, has shown that our teachers are these really powerful forces, and they need to be in the decision making for education and for communities. But the short answer is we do it through a lot of just different methods, surveys, one-on-one. I spend a lot of time in schools, and when I go around schools, I ask questions of teachers. And I ask people, what do you need? What do you need to do your job better? What do you need to do make this more bearable? What do you need to be stronger? What do your students need? And that voice is what helps me ask the next question or look at the policy that needs to be addressed, to determine what we can do to improve this profession for the folks who are doing amazing work.
Thank you. I think that's a really thoughtful answer. I know teachers have impacted me a lot in my education. Okay, my next question is, your tenure has exposed a commitment to closing the achievement gap in Tcas students. What are some tangible measures that your administration has taken in this area?
All right, I'm going to give a little bit of a long-winded answer here, so follow me. I'll talk fast, okay?
I'm ready.
So when I first started, I went around to every meeting I could in town, and I showed everybody where we were. And the big data point I showed people, whether this Chamber of Commerce, our Board of Education, our parents, you name it, the biggest data point I showed them is our historical approach in reading proficiency for our elementary students, okay? And really the data point I showed them was a third of our third graders could read proficiently before leaving third grade. So picture a class of 18 students. Only 6 of them had the skills necessary to do what it was necessary in fourth grade. 12 of them did not have the reading proficiency, the reading skill set to be successful, to learn, because they have to read to learn after third grade. So we walked that data point out everywhere to show urgency. And then when you dig into that data point, when you look at students who are successful and students who are not successful, way too often, African-American students were in the part of not being proficient in reading. And quite honestly, that should never be allowed in our communities. Now, that data point trends with the national data point the same, right? A third of third graders reading proficiently, most often students of color who are the ones who are not reading proficiently. We should be ashamed of ourselves, right? That should not happen in our communities. That should not happen in America. So what this school system did is we put all of our resources in kindergarten 1 and 2 and said, if we can get this is our theory of action. If we can get our students reading before third grade, then they will be able to learn because they can read from grades 4 through 12. So here's a measurable to your question. We focused year 1 on just kindergarten. We said, let's take all of our kindergarten students, no matter what background they come from. Let's knock it out of the park on every kindergarten student and make 100% our goal. Historically, we were meeting the mark of 30, sometimes 40% of our kindergartners were ready for first grade. Well, after a year of intensive professional development for teachers, intervention for students, after school programs, summer programs, that first year we got to 80% of our kindergartners ready for first grade. So we substantially changed that. And here's the part that really shows success was on its way. Our students, our African-American students who typically were at the 30% range. All of a sudden, we had schools that were at 90% proficiency of all kindergartners, regardless of zip code, regardless of student race, regardless of poverty. It did not matter. We had students who performed where they needed to perform, leaving kindergarten, going into first grade. Now that was year one. Year two was COVID. So we got smacked, right? So now we got to pick that back up this year and next year to make sure we cover the ground. But our theory of action is, if we can get all students reading before third grade, they then have the skill set, the knowledge and the ability, the proficiency to learn what comes after. So that is the one area that we just focused and said, enough is enough. Let's make sure all students can read before third grade.
But how has COVID-19 affected the school district's approach in measuring and understanding student progress and achievement?
So it hasn't impacted our ability to measure. It's impacted our ability to impact the measurement, right? So we've lost some instructional time, certainly last year. We've adjusted our methods and our approaches with virtual school and with hybrid approaches to getting back into school. We've dealt with a lot of health issues that we've had to work around. So it has impacted our ability to do the work that we were doing pre-COVID. Pre-COVID, we were on a pretty solid plan to change outcomes for a lot of students, all students, and COVID just stopped us, right? So now we've got to double down efforts that we were already, quite honestly, doubling down on. So now you've got this urgency to double where we were. We were already a pretty kind of high octane district trying to do a lot of great things, and now we've got to double those efforts. So the gaps that were there that we were just talking about question before, those gaps got larger. So now we've got to make sure we've got enough strategy and resources to overcome that now larger gap.
Thank you. What are some key objectives in the TCS strategic plan that the district wants to prioritize in the upcoming school year?
All right, you ready for them?
I'm ready.
We've got to make sure every student is reading before third grade, period. Okay, that objective remains in the strategic plan. Number two, we've got to make sure, because we believe in our school system, that the diploma of the school system should have value. So when you leave your school system with that diploma, it should mean something to the college you're going to or to the career you're going to. So we want every student to leave our school system with college credit or a career credential. Whether in our college credits, we have students, we now have an ability for every student to have access to dual enrollment. So they can go to Shelton State, University of Alabama, or Stillman College, no cost. We'll pay for it for up to 9 hours. We can also get credentialing through our Career Tech Academy. So that's number two. We want to make sure every student who leaves us has a diploma that has value in post-secondary education. Number three, we want to address equity in our school system. We've got to make sure every student has access, every student has opportunity, and every student has the ability to take advantage of that access. It's one thing to say we have programs that we offer. It's another thing to make sure we say we're going to help students get into these rigorous courses. We can't just say we have dual enrollment and not help students get into dual enrollment and be successful in dual enrollment. So that would be the third piece, is a lens of equity, to make sure we are truly focusing on all students, not some students, not a lot of students, but all students. And then that gets also at that disparity in achievement that we've got in our school system. And then the fourth bigger objective in there is our STEM work. We want to make sure all of our students have access to STEM, because that becomes an equity issue. If some students have experiences in science, technology, engineering, and math, and others do not, then it's an equity issue. So we've got to make sure all students have access, so that when they get out in this world, because it's a different world that the two of you are about to go into, we've got to make sure you're highly prepared, and not just prepared, but that you are ready for it and ready to be highly successful. So those are our kind of big rocks, if you will, in this future strategic plan, to make sure our students are all successful.
Thank you. My last question for you, and it's kind of two questions. What actions should parents take in order to ensure that their child is succeeding according to TCS guidelines? And how have these actions aid in reducing the number of failing schools in the district?
parenting is tough. I think we've got to do more to make sure we are engaging our parents. We've got to make sure our schools are welcoming places so that all parents feel welcome there. We've got to be clear with our parents about what they can do to support their child. So even if I'm working 2 jobs, I maybe can't be at the school, but I can still support my child in his educational endeavors. We've got to be clear about how to do that, how to support your child. We've got to be so welcoming at the schools that parents don't feel that they only go to the school when there's a problem. We want parents engaged in the learning, not just when there's a problem or for a PTA event to sell donuts or something, right? So that's the work we've got to do, is be really welcoming and highly communicative. We've got to make sure our parents know everything there is to know, because that builds trust, right? If we're sharing information and hearing the voice of parents about what we can do to improve our schools, then we know better. They're our customers, right? They're one of our customers. Our parents are. So we've got to treat them that way. And that's something we're trying to do in our school system. Because again, theory of action, if parents are more involved, we know the outcomes for students improve. Every bit of research that's out there shows that involved parents have greater outcomes, academic outcomes for their children. So we've got to be clear about defining what that means, how it's done, and being real clear about making sure all students have that relationship with their parents and their school and the students.
It was so great having you, and I'm so happy I was able to interview you.
Well, thank you. It has been a pleasure. And I'll tell you what, guys, I like what you're doing here. I think it's an awesome conversation, and I love seeing young people open that conversation to begin thinking through your own paths and what you choose to do, and quite honestly, how you do it. I think you all, the two of you here, the more you know, the more you can be agents of change too, right? And I think having conversations like what you're doing here, that empowers you with knowledge to become agents of change and to look at things and say, okay, how do I improve that as a young person? And then certainly, how do I improve it as I move forward in college and beyond?
Thank you so much. Okay.
Take
I'll
care,
see
okay?
you. You too. Bye
All
bye.
right, bye-bye.
Thank you.